1 week after Autumn came home with them, Alora announced that crinkle-free dog food was cruel. Lindsay opened one eye. It was 7:15 on Saturday morning. She was still in bed, although the sounds coming from the kitchen suggested that the rest of the house had rejected sleep as a concept. A metal bowl struck the floor. Fred barked. Daphne raced down the hallway with something that crinkled. "What happened?" Lindsay called. "This bag doesn't make noise. Why does it need to?" "So they know I'm feeding them. You could use words." "I did. They ignored me." "That sounds like them." Another bowl hit the floor. Lindsay got out of bed. In the kitchen, Alora stood beside a newly opened bag of dog food. Its thick, fabric-like material produced almost no sound when handled. Fred sat in front of his empty bowl, barking at Alora to correct the apparent oversight. Daphne circled the island with one of the crinkly mice from the outdoor market. "They associate crinkling with food," Alora said. "The new bag doesn't crinkle, so they don't believe it contains anything." Fred barked again. "He appears open to persuasion," Lindsay said. "I fed him." Lindsay looked into Fred's bowl. "Then where is it?" "He inhaled it." Fred pawed Alora's leg. "He says you didn't. He's lying. Dogs don't lie." Fred stared at her with the solemn innocence of a creature who had never eaten anything in his life. "Fine," Lindsay said. "Dogs omit relevant facts." Alora measured Daphne's breakfast into the second bowl. Before putting it down, she removed 10 pieces of kibble and dropped them into the jar labeled Daphne. Then she took 10 pieces from Fred's daily portion and filled his jar. "Today's tokens," she said. "They are not tokens. They are limited units of food exchanged for behavior. Your father has corrupted you." David entered the kitchen wearing slippers and carrying coffee. "She understands the economy. No economics before 8. Across the kitchen, Daphne shook the mouse hard enough to strike herself in the face. The seam split, scattering stuffing across the floor. Everyone stopped. Daphne looked at the ruined mouse, then she looked at Lindsay. "No," Lindsay said. "You did that." Daphne dropped the remains and walked away. "She doesn't even feel bad," Alora said. "She feels finished." Fred rushed over and grabbed the empty fabric shell. Daphne immediately wanted it again. Within seconds, they were racing through the kitchen, Fred carrying half a mouse and Daphne pursuing him through a cloud of stuffing. "Leave it!" Alora shouted. The dogs accelerated. Fred rounded the island. Daphne cut across the center and intercepted him. The two collided, recovered, and continued in the opposite direction. David watched them pass. "Market forces. No economics before coffee," Lindsay reminded him. "I have coffee." Alora caught Fred by the collar and removed the torn fabric from his mouth. "We need another mouse." "They have 2 frogs, a rope, 4 balls, and an entire basket of toys," David said. "But no mouse. They destroyed the mouse. Daphne destroyed it. Fred is an accessory after the fact." Alora held up the torn shell. "I'm buying another one." "Throw that away first," Lindsay said. "I might repair it." She placed it on the counter beside the token jars. Daphne sat below it and stared upward. "You're rewarding destruction," Lindsay said. "I'm replacing something they loved." Which teaches them that broken toys regenerate. They're dogs, they don't understand supply chains. David took another sip of coffee. They understand demand. An hour later, the family was back at Prince and Paws. Lindsay had intended for David and Alora to go alone. Then Alora argued that Daphne needed to approve the replacement mouse. Fred could not remain home because he would feel excluded. Autumn could not come because she was a cat, which was the first sensible limitation anyone had proposed. So Lindsay came to help. The tennis ball basket the dogs had overturned during their previous visit had been moved to a higher shelf. Beneath it, a handwritten sign read, "Please ask for assistance. Do not allow DOGS to select their own balls." "That's definitely about us," Alora said. Fred jumped toward the basket. Daphne jumped because Fred had. "Sit," Lindsay said. Neither dog listened. She waited. Fred's front paws danced against the floor. Daphne whined. When it became clear that no one was moving toward the balls, Fred sat. Daphne followed. "Yes." Each received a piece of kibble from the morning jars. The young clerk appeared behind the counter. He recognized the dogs before he recognized the people. "Oh," he said. "They've been training," Lindsay assured him. "I can see that." Both dogs remained seated. Then Fred noticed a cardboard box behind the counter and barked. Daphne joined him. The clerk nodded. "Still in progress." They found the mice near the cat supplies. Alora selected 2 identical replacements and a feather toy for Autumn. Then she discovered a double-ended leash coupler advertised as an easy way to walk 2 dogs at once. "This," she said, "will solve everything." "No product has ever lived up to that sentence," David said. They paid and took the dogs outside to test it. Alora attached both collars to the coupler and took the single handle. "See, now they have to stay together." Fred saw a pigeon to the left. Daphne noticed a child carrying a stuffed animal to the right. The dogs accelerated in opposite directions. For one miraculous moment, their equal force kept Alora perfectly centered. Then the pigeon flew across the sidewalk. Daphne saw it. Both dogs changed direction at once. Alora pitched forward and landed face first against a wire bin filled with plush toys. Fred stopped. Daphne stopped beside him. The bin rocked but remained upright. Lindsay hurried over. "Are you hurt?" Alora lifted her face from a stuffed octopus. "I hate this leash." David inspected the coupler. The equipment performed exactly as designed. "Then I hate the design." The clerk came outside and held the door open. "Do you want to return it?" "Yes." Before anyone could gather the shopping bags, Fred picked one up by the handles and trotted back into the store. Daphne followed him. David watched them go. He seized through time. "He saw the open door," Lindsay said. "He anticipated the return. He stole our bag." Different interpretations of the same data. By the time they left, the coupler had been returned and the plush octopus had been purchased because Alora felt responsible for landing on it. The outing had been shorter than their previous visit. Nothing had collapsed, no merchandise had scattered across the floor, and both dogs entered the car when asked. Lindsay decided not to count Fred stealing the bag. On the drive home, she called Ruth. "How is Autumn?" Ruth asked. "Better. She finished the antibiotics and she's eating well." "And the dogs?" "Obsessed. Dangerously, not so far we've kept them separated. They've smelled each other beneath the door, and we've done a few introductions through the gate." "Does she hide?" "Only when Fred barks, Daphne runs, someone enters too quickly, or the refrigerator makes ice." "So most of the time." "She comes out at night." There was a pause. "I could come by this afternoon," Ruth said, "if you want help with the next introduction." Lindsay had expected to negotiate. "Today, I'm free at 3. That was easy. "You sound disappointed." "I prepared arguments." "Save them. You seem like someone who will find another use." Ruth arrived carrying a container of cat treats and a folder of veterinary records. Fred and Daphne met her at the door. Both dogs jumped. "Down," Lindsay said. Both dropped. Fred jumped again. Daphne followed. "Sit." They sat. "Yes." Alora distributed 2 pieces of kibble. Ruth looked at the jars. "Still using tokens?" "They aren't actually tokens," Lindsay said. "They absolutely are," David called from the living room. Ruth let the dogs sniff her hands. "Where's Autumn?" "In the guest bathroom." "You've kept it as her safe room?" "The door stays closed when we can't supervise. We've been opening it with the gate in place for a few minutes at a time." "Good." Alora retrieved the new feather toy. She opened the bathroom door but left the gate secured across the doorway. Autumn sat on the other side. Her ear infection had cleared, and her orange coat had begun to recover its shine. She regarded the family with the profound distrust of a creature who had spent a week studying the household and found its management questionable. Fred approached the gate. Daphne crowded beside him. Autumn hissed. Both dogs jumped backward. Ruth smiled. "She remembers them." "They had never met before the shelter," Lindsay said. "She remembers the type." Alora moved the feather toy across the bathroom floor. Autumn's eyes followed it. She crouched, wiggled once, and pounced. Fred lunged toward the gate. "Leave it," Lindsay said. He stopped at the barrier. Daphne barked. Autumn froze. "No, Daphne." Daphne barked again. Lindsay reached toward the token jar, then stopped. Rewarding her immediately would only pay her to become quiet after barking. She waited. Daphne looked at Autumn, then at Lindsay. "Sit." Daphne sat. "Yes." Only then did Lindsay give her a piece of kibble. Fred, who had remained standing without barking, sat beside her. Yes, he received one too. Ruth watched them closely. They listened to you. Eventually, that still counts. Alora moved the feather again. Autumn pounced. This time, neither dog lunged. After several minutes, Ruth suggested opening the gate. Lindsay looked at Fred and Daphne. Is that safe? We'll keep them leashed. Autumn keeps access to the bathroom, and no one forces contact. If any of them become too excited, we end the session. David attached the leashes. Alora placed the token jars on the kitchen counter, out of sight. We aren't using those, Lindsay asked. Let's see whether they can listen without staring at food, Ruth said. Lindsay opened the gate. Nothing happened. Autumn remained inside. Fred waited in the hallway. Daphne trembled beside him. Maybe she isn't ready, Lindsay said. Autumn stepped across the threshold. Both dogs froze. The same animals who barked at refrigerators, airplanes, cardboard boxes, rubber frogs, and stationary fire hydrants stood utterly silent as a small orange cat walked into the living room. Autumn crossed to the couch and jumped onto the back cushion. From there, she examined Fred and Daphne. Fred looked at Lindsay. Daphne looked at Fred. Autumn lifted one paw and began washing it. Is she ignoring them? Alora whispered. Deliberately, Ruth said, it's a position of strength. Daphne crept forward. Leave her. Daphne stopped. Fred lay down. After a moment, Daphne lay beside him. Lindsay released the breath she had been holding. Yes, she said quietly. No one reached for the jars. Autumn remained on the couch for several minutes. Then she returned to the guest bathroom on her own. Ruth closed the gate. That's enough for today, she said. That was it? Alora asked. That was a successful introduction. They barely did anything. Exactly. They returned to the living room while Autumn settled behind the gate. Ruth placed the folder on the coffee table. The other two cats who needed temporary placement found foster homes, she said. One of my other cats was adopted yesterday. That's wonderful, Lindsay said. It is. But I'm under the landlord's limit now. Autumn can come back with me if that's what everyone wants. Lindsay looked toward the hallway. You want her back. I want her safe. She is safe. I can see that. Ruth ran one thumb along the edge of the folder. I also know what happens when I keep every animal because I'm afraid no one else will love it correctly. I have to learn to let someone else help. Lindsay looked at David. Before she could speak, he picked up the folder. I called the shelter coordinator yesterday, he said. You did. I asked what would happen if we wanted to adopt her. Alora grinned. You want to keep her. I asked a procedural question. You downloaded the application, Lindsay said. It was attached to the email. And printed it. I prefer paper. Ruth smiled. David opened the folder. Inside was an adoption application bearing the shelter's letterhead. The coordinator said we can submit it after the supervised introduction, he said. The shelter will review it, confirm that Autumn is comfortable here, and make the final decision. Lindsay looked at him. When were you going to tell me? When I finished reading the liability section. You want to adopt her. David glanced toward the guest bathroom. Autumn sat behind the gate, watching them. We have already surrendered the bathroom. Opportunity cost, Alora said. Exactly. Lindsay took the application. We would like to adopt her. Ruth's eyes filled, but she smiled. I hoped you would. They completed the form together. Lindsay and David signed as applicants. Ruth added her report as Autumn's previous foster, describing the successful introduction and the cat's adjustment during the past week. The shelter would make the decision. Until then, Autumn remained their foster cat. Ruth stayed for another hour, reviewing Autumn's feeding schedule, favorite hiding places, and habit of waking people by touching their faces with one paw. At the door, she delayed leaving. You can visit, Lindsay said. I know, I mean it. I know that too. Ruth looked toward the guest bathroom. Autumn did not come to say goodbye. She never does, Ruth said. 3 weeks later, the house had developed a new routine. The shelter approved the adoption after a follow-up call and a second supervised visit. Lindsay and David completed the paperwork, paid the adoption fee, and received a new microchip registration listing Autumn as a permanent member of the family. The introductions continued slowly. During the first week, Autumn stayed mostly behind the gate. During the second, she began entering the living room while Fred and Daphne were leashed. By the third, the leashes remained nearby, but usually unnecessary. Autumn still retreated to the guest bathroom when the dogs became too loud. Fred still forgot that cats did not enjoy being approached at full speed. Daphne still barked when Autumn appeared somewhere unexpected, but everyone recovered sooner. Autumn rejected both new crinkly mice Alora had purchased. Instead, she found the torn shell Daphne had destroyed and Alora had never repaired. She carried it throughout the house as if its missing stuffing made it more valuable. Perceived scarcity, David said. It was trash, Lindsay replied. Found assets. One evening, the family gathered in the living room. Alora sat on the floor between Fred and Daphne. David occupied one end of the couch. Lindsay took the other. Autumn remained along the back cushion, close enough to belong and far enough to deny it. For several minutes, the house was quiet. Then Fred found the plush octopus. Daphne grabbed one of its legs. Alora tried to rescue it. The dogs pulled in opposite directions. The octopus stretched between them. Autumn jumped onto the coffee table to avoid the commotion, knocking her ruined mouse onto the floor. David closed his eyes. "There it is," he said. "What?" Lindsay asked. "The true cost." Alora lost her grip on the octopus. Fred tumbled backward. Daphne ran through the room with the toy, and Fred chased her. Autumn followed them with her eyes. Then she jumped down, seized the torn mouse, and ran after the dogs. The three animals disappeared into the hallway. A crash came from the kitchen. Lindsay started to rise. David caught her hand. "Wait!" They listened. Fred barked once. Daphne barked twice. A metal bowl rolled across the floor. Then the house became quiet again. Lindsay sat back. "They're going to destroy everything we own. Probably. We should stop them. In a minute." Alora leaned against the couch. "Do you think they're happy?" David considered the question. "Dogs are good at making happiness look contagious." "What about cats?" Alora asked. Autumn raced back into the room with the torn mouse in her mouth. Fred and Daphne followed close behind. Lindsay smiled. "Cats make you earn it." The animals completed one lap around the room. "Enough," Lindsay said. Fred slowed. Daphne stopped beside him. Autumn jumped onto the couch and settled between Lindsay and David. She had been choosing that spot for nearly a week, although she still behaved as if each visit were accidental. Fred lay at Lindsay's feet. Daphne dropped beside him. The token jars sat untouched on the kitchen counter. No one reached for one. No one needed one. The house was still noisy, crowded, and covered in fur. Quiet never lasted long, and order remained mostly theoretical. Tomorrow, someone would break a toy, steal a shoe, overturn a bowl, or bark at something that had been in the same place for years. But for the moment, they were together. A little less frenzy, a little more family.